You know, in the high-stakes world of tech, silence isn't just golden, it's mandatory. It's enforced by these massive contracts designed to be legal muzzles. But what happens when one of those muzzles has a hidden key? Well, let me tell you a story about how one single overlooked paragraph in a totally standard agreement became a landmine worth $2 billion.
So how is that even possible? How can the fine print, the stuff that most of us just scroll past and click agree, end up being worth more than an entire company? Well, let's get into it.
Okay, part one. It all kicks off with the main tool for this kind of corporate warfare, the ironclad non-disclosure agreement. A non-disclosure agreement, an NDA. We've all heard the term, right? It's basically a legal pinky promise between companies. It's a contract that says, hey, what we're about to show you is our secret sauce, and you have to promise not to share the recipe. Seems pretty straightforward.
Well, not so fast. Our story involves a small firm, we'll call them Nova, and a tech giant, Apex. Nova signed what they thought was a standard NDA to protect their secret algorithm. But Apex slipped in something called a residuals clause. Think of it as a memory clause, and yeah, it's just as sneaky as it sounds. It was this crazy loophole that let their employees use any of Nova's confidential info they could remember, just as long as they didn't write it down. It was a backdoor for stealing ideas, hidden right there in plain sight.
And that one little clause, it set the stage for an absolute heist right out in the open.
The timeline here just tells the whole story. On day one, Nova signs the NDA, totally trusting the process. You fast forward 18 months, and Apex launches this massive new product. And on launch day, Nova's founders are watching in absolute horror as they realize the core feature is a direct, identical copy of their technology.
So when Nova obviously complained, Apex's legal team sent back this response, and it is absolutely chilling. They basically said, if you sue us, you'll be breaking the confidentiality part of the very contract you signed. Unbelievable, right? They weren't just using the NDA as a shield for the theft, they were using it as a sword to silence the victim.
So it really seemed like it was game over. But this is where the story gets good. This is where we find the contract's hidden, fatal flaw.
You see, Apex thought their contract was bulletproof. I mean, they'd been using it for years. But buried deep inside that 40-page monster of a document was one single sentence they had completely, totally overlooked.
And there it is, section 14.2. Now, it might just look like boring legal jargon, but this was the key that unlocked everything. It essentially said that the whole silence agreement goes out the window if someone is accusing the other party of stealing trade secrets. Apex was so obsessed with building this perfect legal cage that they left the key hanging right in the lock.
And with that one clause, Nova engineered what would become a $2 billion reversal. So how did they weaponize it? With a brilliant four-step legal chess move. First, they isolated that one exception. Second, they used it to trigger a federal investigation into Apex. Now here's the genius part. Third, because responding to a federal investigation is a legal requirement, they could now disclose everything about the theft without violating the NDA. And fourth, that move completely reframed the situation. Apex's strategic silence now looked a whole lot like evidence tampering to the court.
The financial fallout for Apex was, well, it was devastating. The tech they stole was valued at $50 million. But the court found that Apex had used this NDA to systematically crush competitors. Because they acted in such bad faith, the judge applied what are called treble damages. It's a legal multiplier that triples the penalty for willful misconduct. The final judgment? A staggering $2 billion.
So what is the big takeaway here? It's all about finding leverage in the fine print.
This case really teaches some critical lessons. Contracts are two-way streets. A clause meant to protect a giant can absolutely empower the underdog. Complexity creates vulnerability. That tangled web of secrets is just easy to get caught in. But the most important takeaway is this. Nova won because they didn't fight the silence. They used it. They understood that when it looks like you've already lost on paper, the first thing you should do is reread the paper. The exit is almost always hidden in the fine print.
And that brings us to our final thought. The next time you see a contract, a user agreement, or any piece of fine print, are you going to be looking for a shield to protect